Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold on, your head is bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay,
Watch out. Wait.
Let's go back to
The assassination attempt on the former president and current GOP nominee was 26 days ago. Well, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're live on Worldview 2 and our X Spaces simulcast. And we still don't know exactly what happened. In fact, the video you just watched isn't even easy to find in its entirety anymore. Congressional hearings have happened. The director of the Secret Service has resigned, and an investigating team that doesn't even include one of the former military snipers serving in Congress has been formed by Speaker Johnson. 26 days, and we still don't know the details about the assassin himself. In fact, the FBI seems focused on what some are saying may be a sketchy arrest of a person loosely connected to Iran that has nothing to do with the actual assassin. Maybe. So that's where we're at. Investigating agencies that don't have the confidence of the American people anymore, and a Congress that no one trusts either, are supposedly going to produce a factual and complete investigation. I personally have my doubts, and that's why we've asked the former U.S. Secret Service agent, Mike DeGuss, to come on and discuss the facts that we do know today about this history-making event the mainstream media seems to be trying to ignore and memory hold. Mike, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Hey, give folks a little bit more about your background and your bona fides, so to speak, on the organization of the U.S. Secret Service, what your experience level is.
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking me to be here. And, background on me, I spent a career 12 years in the Secret Service from Los Angeles doing cyber crimes, investigating fraud, all that stuff, doing protection. Spent multiple campaigns out from Paul Ryan's detail through Governor Pence, and landed on presidential protection. Was actually on President Trump's detail when I exited the service.
Well, thanks for your service, man. We appreciate it. What are you doing now?
I run global security for a private company, and I basically continue doing the same thing. I protect people, places, and things all over the world.
So what do you before we dive into some of these other clips that we have and concerns from senators, et cetera, what are you thinking when you observe that scene? I mean, I did protection detail work when I was a young EOD troop with the Air Force detached to the Secret Service during major campaign seasons. But so I have my thoughts on it, and I've expressed those. But what's going through your mind as you observe that scene there from the point of view of the president and his team?
Yeah, that's a great question to ask me. It's not an easy answer to give you because it's one of heartache and heartbreak to watch what happens there. I mean, I don't want to jump into the political side on either side of the aisle. I'm kind of agnostic when I talk about this stuff, but watching that event unfold in real time on a former president, it's heart-wrenching to watch. I know those guys. I ran with some of those guys that were on the stage, and so the heart-wrenching side for me, Colonel, is the fact that it happened, and then there's the part of me that's like, it's grateful the way that it unfolded because a protectee of the U.S. Secret Service is alive today. Whether or not there were some failures and issues that occur as you build outer perimeters, middle perimeters, and inner perimeters, what you see on that stage right there with the people reacting in a fraction of a second to jump on the former president. I mean, that's textbook stuff that should be happening. So one, for me, it's a heart-wrenching, heartbreaking situation. And two, I'm very proud of the guys that I used to run with for reacting the way they reacted.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get somebody like you on because, I don't want to talk about the political stuff either. There's enough of that. I have guests that do that. This show is really about the facts and what you see, what you're willing to give us your opinion on, because there's all kinds of things going around like, well, the team didn't react properly to the principal being the president of the United States. Everything from that to the discussion about the inner perimeter, the outer perimeter, the site survey, and those kind of things. So from the team's perspective, the immediate protective detail perspective, I think you sound like you see what I see, which is they reacted in the appropriate way.
Yeah, Colonel, I think there's a lot of reaction that goes into this. It's not easy to train to jump onto somebody in front of 20, 30,000 people when bullets are flying. I mean, the normal reaction for a human being is to tuck tail, run the other way, duck and cover, whatever. But to watch the heroic moves of those people around that stage of the dais, when the crack of the shots come, that takes an inordinate amount of training and then honor and responsibility for the mission when that happens, to turn and go to your protectee, and you're now the meat shield. You're it. So if it comes again, you're standing there to take it. That's not an easy thing for somebody to adopt and go, I'm going to make this my career, my calling today, as part of my DNA. I'm going to stand up there so that the former president can live while I can take it in the chest. So, their mettle got tested that day at that perimeter, that inner perimeter section. Their mettle was tested and proven effective. Like they did what they're trained to do. And for that, tip of the cap, and absolutely proud of what they did that day there. Is there issues beyond that? Absolutely.
Yeah, and the president himself and his family members, myself, I mean, we all say that the inner perimeter team there, the immediate detail, responded very appropriately. It takes guts to do what those guys and gals do, man. It's not, like you said, it's not an easy thing to do. Now, there's been some criticism about how they were delayed in getting him off the stage. I don't personally see that. I have some other concerns about height of the agents in the immediate circle, that kind of thing. But other than that, I don't see that. When you observe them getting him up off the stage, getting him off the ramp, down the ramp, and into what they're using as the beast that day, what do you see
So another great question. You sound like you've been there, done that with the service at a certain level, not presidential level, but at a certain level. So when things like this occur, of course, your job is to get off the X. You want to get a protectee into a car and extract out as fast as possible in the event of a problem. Having said that, it's situationally dependent, Colonel, on the situation, meaning protectee goes down. So in this case, former President Trump is down. They kind of go over him, and while you hear some of the audibles about, hey, are we set, are we ready, are we moving, blah blah blah, there's a detail leader in there that's actually checking for issues. They know there was blood from his ear, and now, is that the only blood? Was it from his ear? Do we have holes in his chest? Do I got a sucking chest wound that I got to plug? Because if I pick him up and move him and take the pressure off, are we going to cause a bigger problem? Does he have an abdomen wound? Does he have something in an artery? So they're just doing a quick up and down assessment that you can't see under the cover of those flags on the stage there before they decide to move him. Should they have moved him, a minute or two faster? Yeah, maybe. But that's the benefit of you and I being an armchair quarterback watching, not in the seconds of where they are. So, I mean, yeah, we could critique it, but again, I think it's all fine and well, and they did exactly what they should have done. The next pieces are having seen him when they stand up, some issues about height like you addressed. Agreed. For me personally, protection should match a protectee. If you're 6'2", you should have somebody 6 feet standing there. But again, that's nitpicky for me.
Yeah, when I worked on the Reagan detail and the George H.W. Bush detail were the two that I did the most, and then some Democrat candidates like Jesse Jackson and Gary Hart.
Sure.
The agents in the immediate circle were always at least a head height, similar height, not necessarily build, because obviously you're big people, thin people, etc. But that's what we were seeing, and it appeared to be the standard. I just wondered if has the standard changed from that, because they did obviously have some people that were shorter than him in that circle.
Yeah, that's a delicate question for me to answer, and I think with the way I'm going to phrase an answer to you, Colonel, is that it's not a standard change. It's not a presidential protection level, meaning in the world of safety and security through Secret Service, you're probably familiar with the United Nations. So every visiting foreign leader that comes over here gets a Secret Service attachment, low, medium, high dignitaries, the Pope. But let's take presidential level, and then you got vice presidential level, then you get former presidents, etc. So a former president, which at the time for that conversation is President Trump right there, has a certain level afforded him. And it doesn't mean that there's a standard of, hey, we should have had 6'2" and above or whatever. It just means what they're bringing to the party for a former presidential protection package is what it is. It's just not playing in the major leagues that day. You're playing like college ball, maybe.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't understand that. And I was under the impression that since he's the GOP nominee and a former president, that his protection details should be at the presidential level at this point. What are the different levels? Because on that day, he was the GOP nominee and a former president. So what are the differences? Can you talk about that at all without revealing secrets?
Yeah, so generically, he's the de facto nominee on that day. But if you recall, the RNC doesn't officially nominate where he formally stands in front of the RNC until the following week and says, I accept your nomination, right? So on paper, it's not the formal official RNC nominee until that RNC convention the following week. And so typically how it works is once you're now the formal nominee, we roll into the RNC with the full scope package that rivals what the President of the United States has. So the week prior, it just so happened he didn't have the full scope. They were building assets towards that on a Friday, going into a large scale rally ahead of the week for the RNC. But just understand the dynamics are a little different because he's right there, but he's not officially the guy yet, even though by all outward appearances, that's true.
Let's talk about that when we come back from this break, and we'll also show a little bit of a clip from Senator Ron Johnson in an interview, who's doing part of the investigation on the Senate side, with some factual questions that he had almost right after the fact on July 21st, I think is that clip, Mike. So when we come back from this break, we'll talk about those things with Mike DeGuss, former U.S. Secret Service, and understands the facts of what happened and is helping us walk through these issues of July 13th. We'll be right back.
You sent a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland, Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and Director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, about this epic failure of security. Can you walk us through what you'd like to see and your preliminary findings of your investigation, which has now become bipartisan? Is that correct?
Correct. I spoke with Chairman Blumenthal, the chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee Investigation. I'm the ranking member. He completely agrees with me that we must start doing transcribed interviews with all the witnesses now while memories are fresh. So that's really good news from my standpoint. My staff immediately started reaching out to local law enforcement. We've gathered a fair amount of information. Again, we're just scratching the surface. But a couple of things that we found out. For example, the Secret Service did not even attend the 9 o'clock security meeting with local law enforcement. Pretty well put in charge the Butler County law enforcement to coordinate things. Law enforcement wasn't even on the same channel.
So
the
that was
SWAT and
just to be
sniper
clear,
teams
just to
weren't-
be clear, Senator, that was a 9 a.m. meeting on July 13th, the day of the shooting.
Correct.
Secret
Correct. Yeah,
Service
Secret
wasn't
Service
there.
had been there for site visits, weren't even there. Kind of turned over some of the outer perimeter stuff to local law enforcement. They weren't even on the same security channel. So the sniper and SWAT teams weren't on the same channel as the patrol officers, and they weren't on the same channel as Secret Service. So they had to relay things. One of the things we found out is that we've got a more detailed timeline. This picture is now on the internet, but a photo was taken by the local sniper team in the AGR building at 5:14 of Crooks. So again, we had pictures of this guy. Why wasn't he intercepted? There's so many
just to be clear, the
unanswered
pictures-
questions here.
The pictures were taken at 5:14, and he was shot at 6:11.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, we've got a more.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And we're talking about the July 13th assassination attempt on former President and now GOP presidential nominee Donald J. Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. And some of the details that we've learned about it. We've got a great guest today, Mike DeGuess, former U.S. Secret Service agent, to help us walk through that. And Mike, I don't want to go into the politics of this, but unfortunately, the Congress does have oversight responsibilities, and Johnson's and Blumenthal appear to be maintaining their bipartisanship so far. I've been kind of observing from afar, and even the House committee hearings we've heard have been pretty much everybody's together and asking the same kind of questions. So it hasn't been taking a political turn yet. But some of the things that he brought up there, and this was July 21st, so a fairly short time period after that, were questions that were starting to be asked, I guess this guy was seen a couple of times in about the hour to 90-minute period leading up to the shooting. I was just wanting to ask you if you have any insight into the process when the security teams catch somebody like that. I don't know if catch is the right word, but when they encounter someone like that, and it seems like the encounters were in stages, and they kept progressively identifying different things. but the culmination didn't happen until like 30 seconds prior to the first round being fired, the way I understand it, in the current timeline that we know. Obviously, things change every day on this. I was just wondering if you have any insight on that, and what should have happened if what did happen wasn't what should have happened.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that question, Colonel, and a lot to unpack from what Senator Johnson's asking about and making reference to. So first off, 9 o'clock meeting with PD, great, fine and well. The event starts later in the day. Whether they had a local PD meeting or not, I would assume the site agent would have been there. I don't know the answer to that question. I can tell you in hindsight, for me, we would have had a site agent there at a PD meeting. And additionally, the PD doesn't just show up to say, hey, you're doing outer perimeter. It is a Secret Service site and a Secret Service protectee, so there is direction. However, we cannot do the job as a Secret Service team without local assets. So for example, Colonel, if I take and put the President of the United States on Air Force One, who flies the aircraft? It's not me. It's the United States Air Force, right? So they build their plans, they coordinate with the towers, FAA, military airspace, all that stuff. I bring them in and put them on that aircraft, but I'm reliant on them to do everything in that aircraft to and through point A to B. You could go further and say, do the pilots change the oil, change the brake pads, check the tire pressure in AF1? The answer is no, it's all the maintenance crews. So they're reliant on the next layer. So just giving you that as an analogy, local PD, state PD absolutely are necessary no matter where we take a protectee, because they have local enforcement, local jurisdiction, local control over the roads, etc. So whether they did a police meeting with or without Secret Service, to me, I'm going to say at 9 o'clock in the morning that day, that's not earth shattering. That's like they could do a head count, rally up. Hey, do we got everybody here on shift today? Hey, Tom, Bill, Fred, Emma, whatever your names are, let's do a roll call and check in. Hey, we're meeting with so-and-so at 11 o'clock today from the service to get posted up and briefed. So to me, that point, I'm going to say is not earth shattering. It's not really a crisis of anything to me. The next one I heard him bring up, though, is the communications piece and breakdown between local law enforcement, sniper teams, on the same radios as Secret Service. And, Colonel, I could tell, I don't know where you served when it comes to battle and in it, but from your protection experience, I'm going to assume you had an earpiece and a radio on you when you were helping support us. And you cannot have external departments on an internal channel for the service, meaning I can't have that much chatter happening within the same radio frequencies because everybody's going to step on each other. So nothing's going to get out. So of course, there's going to be a dissemination, a security room, a control and flow between different frequencies and channels and different departments. And that's why you run security rooms, command post. And so what my understanding was is that building where they were at, that the crooks got on, that was actually where they were based at and operational as far as local and state law enforcement. That was their post. That's where their operational origin was. That was their security room or command post and base of operations for us, or us being the service.
Yeah.
So
I think inside that comms command post, and you're exactly right. But inside that, who controls the flow of information to your agents, to the Secret Service agents? Is there somebody designated? Is there a site agent designated inside that command post that does that, or somebody else?
Generally speaking, in a large-scale event at a certain level, you would assign an agent in there to route communications and coordinate with local, state, fire, EMS, and Secret Service, the detail. And so you're passing information all the time, meaning if something's relevant, so protectee lands, so let's just say former Trump lands at the airport, that person would put out, so any post-stand or anybody relevant for the site knows on the deck at the airport, they're 15 minutes out. You're just constantly pitching and catching information. Additionally, local PD, if they, to use your term, if they caught crooks, meaning you spotted him and he's, let's call him a suspicious person of interest. He's not a suspect, there's crime committed, but it's behavior that's like a pattern and indicator of something that's not leading in a direction that's probably safer or a good thing. So we're going to take note of it. You should pass that info, and it goes through the hub of the wheel now, and everybody gets the dissemination of information. I'm understanding there's some breakdowns on that, meaning the PD may have called in on their radios, but that doesn't go directly to the Secret Service detail at all. I mean, that could have been, I don't know the answer, Colonel, but my assumption is if they're calling on their radio mic, that's going to go to a dispatch center for the local police department. Hopefully it's picked up in a command post there. Local.
Yeah, that's what it appears to be to me too, Mike. Hey, we've got a live audience, and I do let them ask questions. I missed the first 15-minute segment, so I've got a hand up I want to go to, and our host over there is Shell. Shell, go ahead. Who's first, Bishop?
Yes, Bishop, sir.
This one, Mike. What is the Secret Service have a perimeter of line of sight, or what would have been the outside perimeter that the Secret Service been responsible for, and would that have been something covered in the morning briefing?
Colonel, could you repeat that? It's something about line of sight and perimeter, but I couldn't understand all of that.
What would the outer perimeter that Secret Service would be responsible for, and would that have been covered in the morning briefing ordinarily?
So again, going backwards here, when you think of building out a site, I don't care how big or small a protectee is, meaning, top tier, meaning you're the president or you're a low level dignitary. You're constantly thinking outer perimeter, middle perimeter, inner perimeter. So for example, in Pennsylvania, that inner perimeter, let's call it the stage and the ship that showed up with the president, we'll call that the inner. The fence line, we'll call that the middle. Anything beyond that fence line, we'll call the outer perimeter. Again, this is a former president. They don't rate and get a full scope, anything under the sun you want to do when you're moving the president. Because of that, there's certain assets that are assigned. There's post standards from the service that are dispatched. My understanding is they brought in HSI, which is common all the time during campaign season, to bring in outside federal agencies to help support, just like we relied on the local and the state police out there in Pennsylvania to support that outer perimeter. Additionally, you have things like the 2 sniper teams behind Trump that you see up and behind him on the stage. Their job, they have an AOR or an area of responsibility. They're constantly screening and looking through and for. And so something like an outer perimeter in that building where Crooks was able to get, that is noted in an outer perimeter survey. It's noted in your planning. And what you're trying to accomplish is, how do we do line of sight mitigation? Some of that's done through environmental manipulation, meaning we take and bring in tractor trailer trucks and you put them, offset or together. And now there's a line of sight coverage between that building and the stage. You could hang flags down. You could run buses or dump trucks with sand in them. And that'll help quarantine off any sort of vehicle explosive devices. But additionally, they have the sniper teams behind former President Trump to help with outer perimeter issues and line of sight from a distance because of tree lines and buildings. But this is where this one gets a little wonky, because that building was posted by PD. So on a tactical survey, for me as a Secret Service guy, knowing that that building is occupied by law enforcement and they're there to be helpful, it's a less of a problem for us because it's posted and manned by PD. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't control the line of sight mitigations that should have been in place, or could have been is a better word. I don't want to critique it, but that could have been implemented pretty quickly and efficiently to deploy. And I mean, you could have easily talked to former President Trump's staff when they come out and do the advance, just like the service team comes out to advance. The staff wants very specific things when they're looking for the optics at the camera shots and the angles and all that stuff. And so the job of a Secret Service agent, when you're coming out to build a site, your job is to try to sell a staff liaison a used car they're not looking to buy. They want it to be as open, as friendly as we can get, the best camera angles. My job is to give you that, but help you understand, like if I rotate the stage 90 degrees, that audience that was on the stands behind the stage now would have been between that building and the stage. And I use the same stuff. I'm just rotating a little bit, and I'm going to try to sell you the used car you're not looking to buy as to why I want to turn the stage a little bit in the crowd. And that would have, again, you're back to environmental manipulation. So these are some of the challenges that I see from an outer perimeter problem. and we can keep going on this. I'm happy to give you more on this if you want.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we got to take another break, but when we come back, we'll see the clip that you've probably seen it. It's the clip from one of the individuals that was shot. I can't remember his name. It'll be up on the screen when we come back, but it actually shows the assassin running across the roof, and it's really zoomed in. So we'll be back, and we'll dive into a discussion about that and give Mike an opportunity to continue this discussion about the inner, the mid, and the outer perimeter. And I think that's relevant in what we can now see through this video. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show at Worldview Tube, X Spaces simulcast, and it's Wednesday. We're talking July 13th.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
It's zoomed in, so everything looks closer. But you can see somebody on the roof, and yet we were told by the Secret Service acting director yesterday that the sniper teams couldn't see him because he was obscured by the peak in the roof. This would seem to blow a huge hole in that excuse.
Well, John, seeing that video is chilling. It's almost as if, you're looking at the Texas Book Depository building in November of 1963. Fortunately, this had a different outcome, not for the families, of course, of Corey Comparatori. But what we need more and better. We need more personnel, more trained personnel to guard the presidential candidates and other principles that the Secret Service protects. But also, we need better planning. We need better coordination. We need better communication. We need to be leveraging technology. Anti-drone technology probably could have prevented this to begin with. Also, President Trump certainly and others there needs to be a counter surveillance team on the ground. There needs to be counter assault teams on the ground. That wasn't the case in Butler on the 13th. And we need to, and that's why we're going to have every stone, no stone will be left unturned. And we're going to go down to the granular level and see what happened in Butler.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking with former U.S. Secret Service agent Mike DeGuss today about July 13th. And Mike, in that video there, you see some things that we've been discussing, like mitigation factors and those kinds of things. I noticed that there were combines in that area. Now, it's hard to tell exactly how they were positioned because of the way of the effect that you discussed earlier, if you turn the stage 90 degrees, et cetera, and everything. But you see some of those attempts to mitigate this, but that running individual to the naked eye, the casual observer goes, wow, why couldn't those guys that were up on the roof see them? Or did they see them, but they were working through their rules of engagement before they engaged the assassin, and unfortunately he got rounds off before that. What are your thoughts on that video as it's come out just in the last week and a half or so?
yeah, I think this is going to go back to, this is where you start getting criminal investigator training and everything else and the legal side of how things work. And so 2020 hindsight is always 2020 hindsight, but it's not relevant when you dissect and look at something like this, because what's really relevant is what's known at the time and what another reasonable officer or agent, given the same information, make the same determinations with what they can see. And so it's kind of a weird litmus test that you have to look at this of what that video looks like. I mean, for a minute you see a head bobbing aside. I mean, I can't tell you what the video is, if that's crooks or not, by what I see real quick. I know there's somebody there. So let's back into this for a second. What I do know is that the PD and local state were based in that building. I do know that they had been briefed and shared that they would have the roof, they would have it covered, it would be posted. And so now if I'm on the sniper team or the service team, and I know from local or state that we're covering that area, and let's say in the morning post a 9 a.m. meeting that they said they had, do you know how hot it was that day?
I think low 90s, maybe something like that.
Yeah, it was mid to high 90s that day. And in Pennsylvania, everybody knows what a local police officer looks like, and they've got their gear on, their duty belt. And if they're up there anywhere near that roof, one, it gets hot. It gets real hot reflecting off of there. So why they come down, why they decide to not be on the roof line, I don't know. I'm not going to second judge it, but they were there, they're not there. Sniper teams, service teams, post standards are all briefed. That building is owned, it was posted. If you come down and now I'm on a sniper team doing what I'm doing my AOR and looking, and I see a head back on the roof line, what's your first impression of what that might be?
Exactly. That's why I wanted to ask you about that. But are you saying there's been reporting that that local police were up on top of the roof and then they left? Because I haven't seen that reporting.
No, I haven't seen, there isn't any reporting on it, but what I'm understanding is that that's, there was a report that came out that there was some officers that were watching the roof through a window, that they were there and then they left that post. But from what I've heard through the grapevine, that it was briefed that they were on the roof and then they come down. And that's not a critique. It happens the world over when you move the president and you rely on local law enforcement. They need a bathroom push. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They're human. It just happens. But if I see somebody come up on there and I'm on the roof behind former President Trump as a sniper, my first assumption is going to be that's a police officer getting back up on post. Knowing what I know and what I'm briefed on in the tactical survey, I'm not concerned about it yet because they're supposed to be there. I'm not concerned until they.
I haven't seen any evidence yet that says that's what was briefed. The things that I've seen have said that it was said to have been going to be posted, and then the individual didn't show up to that post for some reason or another that hadn't been figured out yet. That was the last reporting I saw on it about 3 or 4 days ago. But yeah, exactly right. That's why I wanted to ask you the rules of engagement for the counter sniper teams is where I wanted to go. The Secret Service team are what under those circumstances? I mean, about 30 seconds prior, I think, is when the radio call went to the central command post that the guy's up there and he does have a gun. So what's the ROE in this situation where they may not even have that comm? I don't even know if they got that comm at this point. Do you?
Can we put a pin into that and let me back into the answer to the question where you want to go with this, and let's do a couple building blocks to get into what you're getting into, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So backing into this, first couple of issues for me on the problems of between the outer and the middle perimeters and how this ultimately transpires. So the first issue for me, outside that middle perimeter fence line, there's a chain link fence that was set up as a perimeter. And maybe you have the video or you've seen it, but you can kind of see what appears to be crooks walking outside the fence line. Have you seen that video?
Correct. I've seen that.
So for me, that's an issue that fence line, because you're screening everybody coming in through metal detectors into a controlled middle perimeter environment. That sight line should have been blocked immediately, because if I'm going to control the ingress, nobody should be able to see inside without going through metal detectors. But having said that, outside the fence line, Colonel, there's been reports of crooks spotted with what appeared to be a golf course rangefinder, etc. Nothing illegal. Is it suspicious or weird? Sure. Should we follow it? Yep. You bet we'll monitor it. And that's where you got to rely on the local teams. That the reporting that I've seen came out that they spotted him. They thought it was suspicious, but they lost him within 10 or 12 minutes or something like that. It's not a crime for what he had, which is a golf rangefinder. You can go on any golf course in America and find 100 of them on any given day. So that's an issue. It's suspicious. It's not anything I can stop him from carrying. Additionally, in the state of Pennsylvania, just like in a handful of states around the United States of America, the state of Pennsylvania allows for the open carry of a firearm. So long as you're outside that fence line in my controlled perimeter environment, He's outside the fence. He could have been walking with that AR-15 over his shoulder. There's nothing I could do about it. It is what it is. I can't just have a sniper go, hey, let's play duck hunt and shoot him because he's carrying an AR-15 outside the fence. So there's some legal stuff that gets very, very delicate to discuss when you build these sites and do these plans. And so this is where the problem for me is the art of safety and protection is exactly that. It's an art form. And there's things that you do from an outer, middle, and inner perspective that would allow me, if I spot or I hear from a local officer or department that says, hey, we spotted somebody that's acting suspicious, they're carrying a rangefinder and they have an AR-15. In the totality of that, those known things, are they problems for me as a Secret Service agent? Yes. Are they outside of my perimeter? They're outside my secure zone. Locals have it. Got it. We're good for right now. If that person decides to start pointing that rifle towards the interior, absolutely, let's take him down and deal with it as far as the cops go take him. I'm not going to have a sniper team pull a trigger just by somebody deciding to do something in an area they're legally allowed to be with a legal weapon on their shoulder in an open environment. But go further. Cops, I'm understanding from the world that I come from and the people I know, that was briefed, that they owned the building. It was their command post, local, state, and or that they were supposed to be up on the roof. And so when Crooks gets up there, if I'm on the inside of that perimeter behind former President Trump looking at everything, my first assumption when I see that head pop up, and literally I can see like the tip of my finger is his head, my first assumption is going to be that's a law enforcement officer up on the roof because of all the other stuff that I've known about the site. So as far as the rules of engagement, am I just going to point my rifle as a sniper and take a shot? Absolutely not. But within a matter of 3 seconds, when Crooks, and we'll digest a little bit more of this, once he did turn from the two officers, which we can talk about, getting behind the roof line with him at his feet, he pointed his rifle, they fell, and he went back to the crest of the roof to Trump and pulled the trigger. The second that first shot cracks off, within 3 seconds, he was taken out. And the counter sniper team, I mean, they should make, a wall of hero memorial about the sniper that pulled that trigger, because that wasn't even his AOR.
Yeah, the question is, should it have been his AOR? And the outer perimeter control, and who has overall responsibility for that? Is it the Secret Service side agent, et cetera? Well, let's go over to the audience and let them ask a question. I've got a couple hands up before we go to this next break, and then we can talk about that. Michelle, go ahead.
Sure.
We have Cookie, sir.
Hey, thanks. Just two quick questions, if you can answer. One, when these things happen, what kind of authority does the president have, or in this case, President Trump have? If he says, no, hey, give me a Band-Aid, I'm going back to talk, can he do that? Or does Secret Service kind of control until the situation and he, whatever is going on with him is secured? And then the other question is, does he keep the same detail around him, or the same inner circle as he goes from rally to rally?
Good question.
Yeah, both good questions. So, the question, if I understood correctly, is can he just say, hey, just give me a Band-Aid, I want to go back on stage? The answer is likely no. He can make the ask, but it's really up to the detail leader that decides, you're bleeding, we just had a problem, let's get you in the trucks, get to the hospital, let's just do a head-to-toe assessment, make sure nothing else is wrong, and let local, state, and the Secret Service team that's there make sure we don't have a secondary problem. So I'm a huge proponent of, we have an issue, let's go +1, always. Meaning there was a shooter, it was neutralized, but let's start thinking, what's step 2? There's got to be another one. Whether there turns out to be or not, let's be ready and anticipatory of number 2 problem. And if we do have number 2 problem, go +1. What's the third problem? And so in this case, the answer is likely you just had an assassination attempt, and that's great. Trump wants to go back on stage. We're not doing it. Get in the truck. We're going to the hospital. And as far as the detail on him, do they shift gears and rotate around? The answer is no. He's got a permanent team assigned to him, and they travel around. The only thing that supplements are post-standers and agents to support up and prop up when you go from Butler, Pennsylvania to LA to DC to Des Moines, Iowa, or wherever you're going to go. They'll bring in additional support standers to support that are Secret Service. But his detail is his permanent detail.
Yeah, those are great questions. All right, we got to take our last break, Mike. When we come back, we'll show a little clip from the House Oversight, one of the House Oversight guys. But I want to continue this discussion because I want to get your thoughts on what do these folks need to be asking about now that we know what we do know, what little we know about the situation and what happened. What are the next sets of questions that the public should be looking for these oversight folks to be asking, so that we can get a good full report out of this assassination attempt that happened on July 13th. I'll be right back at Worldview Tube with the Rob Maness Show.
You know, your thoughts on what needs to happen in terms of this never happening again. I can't help but think that most of the people who are on these jobs, and I don't mean any disrespect to them, but 43 years ago was the last time this happened. I mean, have we reached a level of complacency for those, you know, who witnessed Ronald Reagan's shooting? That is the most similar thing to what we saw yesterday. And I would just wonder how seriously we've been taking this threat.
There were breaches, certainly, and there were lapses. And as you said, Martha, they can't ever happen again. I mean, it'd be one thing if it's a tragedy struck and somebody was taking a shot a mile away. That's awful and that's horrible, and you try to prevent that. That wasn't 1,700 yards away. It was 130. It was in a building right next to the event. So I'm scratching my head. And you made a good point with, what if that bullet had been just a few millimeters on course? What would we be talking about today? Would the fabric of our own representative republic would it be torn apart? I mean, that's what's frightening to me.
It is. I mean,
welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And we're speaking with former U.S. Secret Service agent Mike DeGuss today about what happened on July 13th and the ensuing hearings, investigations, questions that are being asked. And Mike, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, there's been a lot said by these congressional investigators, and we've heard a little bit of it, but based on your knowledge of what we know so far, what should they be asking and looking for at this point to investigate in further, so we have a good report that can be useful to the public, but more importantly to the Secret Service and law enforcement when doing these kinds of protection details?
You know, Colonel, that's a great question. I think I'm going to give you the answer that I don't know that I would look for the problems so much as I would look for the opportunity here. And so what does that mean for me? For me, I would look at this as an opportunity to say that the Secret Service, the world I ran with and the guys I know that are still there, guys and gals, are the very best that America has to offer. Is there problems in there? Absolutely. What department in the government doesn't have them? Pick something from a hospital. How many problems are in there? Education. How many problems are in there? Go to the Senate and Congress. How many problems are in there? Does that mean everybody's bad and horrible doing what they're doing? Absolutely not. But I do think if they want to look at how to correct this, you need to look at the very best that's in there and understand that they need to be amplified within the service to do the job they know how to do and trained to the very best of their ability. Meaning, I think you can't put limitations on framework that says you have to hire X, Y, and Z. You can't ask this question, but you can ask this question. You're talking to trained criminal investigators that put their life on the line, that vet who's coming
Right.
into that world, unleash them to do what they know how to do, and not say, here's your list of questions. And it fits a very specific thing. I think if I'm them on the Hill, I would be looking at the service and say, this is that shining star. It's very tarnished right now. I'm here to help polish this back up. I'm not here to fire everybody and their mother. Or people probably should be let go, probably. But there is some of the very best, most talented people in the world that work within that agency. And I think they don't feel that way today. I know their budgets are bad. I know their hiring numbers are low, and they're trying to find ways to correct that. And I think that's where the opportunity here is. Take this as a learning point, because, you know, to what I think that was Congressman Fallon, I think, on that video. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but what his point is the tragedies, and hey, we were a bullet away from Trump dying, and all the failures. Yes, but comma, it didn't happen. A protectee of the Secret Service is alive today, whether that's by luck, chance, God, or, you know, somebody did the job right that day. The answer is he's alive. So take this, to me, as a learning opportunity and say, guys, I don't ever want to see a line of sight failure again from an outer to a middle perimeter. How do we fix that? For a site agent to build a plan, the lead to come in and sign off, and then the field office to come out and sign, all that needs to be signed through and to and through, so that we have complete adoption on the plan, the policy, the procedure. Communication's got to have a flow. It cannot stop and logjam from local and state and not make its way to the site agent or the detail. Like, all that needs to be addressed. And there's easy ways to do that. And they have the right people within that agency to step in and start helping. And I think where they should do is find the very best within there that know how to do protection better than anybody in the world, and unleash them.
Well, it's just like aircraft accident investigation. You have to identify what the failures are by the facts in order to come up with ways to mitigate those failures and not allow them to happen again. So that's where I'm coming from.
I agree, the failures are obvious, but yeah.
Well, I mean, they are obvious to you and me, but they're not obvious to the public, and it needs to be in a written report, just like an accident investigation board report, so that because the public pays for this, and if we're going to ask for increases in the Secret Service's budget, this is one way to absolutely support getting those increases. One of the things I want to ask you before I go back to the audience, though, is what are you hearing from your former colleagues, if anything at all, at the field agent level? Because they are great people. I mean, these people, I've worked with them. Obviously, you're one of them. They are just like in America's armed forces. When you have trigger pullers in our armed forces, they're the best of the best of the best. And the people that are in charge of them are usually the best of the best of the best of those fields. So what are you hearing from your former colleagues about what's going on with this and what needs to be done? Anything?
Yeah, and in fact, funny story for you. I'm going to call it Team America. We just had a bunch of former colleagues of mine and their families over and just celebrated America and patted them on the back, because they're all decimated. They're all down in the dumps. A lot of them see this, and unfortunately what happens, you could be a Secret Service agent on Nancy Reagan's detail before she passed away, and everybody assumes you can do presidential protection because you're a Secret Service agent, and that's just not how this works. And so I think, I mean, look, there's the Major League Baseball players, there's collegiate, there's high school, middle school, T-ball. They're all baseball players. They're all playing baseball. Very different games to play. And so I think, for what I know and the colleagues I had coming out of presidential level, they've all taken a black eye on this. I've taken a black eye. I mean, I'm man enough to tell you, Colonel, I shed tears over this, because I'm, even though I'm no longer there, I'm married to the Secret Service till the day I die, and vice versa. And if they fail, I'm going to fail. If I fail out in the private sector, they're going to feel it. And so I would do everything I can to support and prop these guys and gals back up. And I think, going back to the question on what are they looking for and what should they be looking for, you know, unfortunately, on the way I shouldn't say unfortunately, that's probably the wrong term to use, but the reality is the FBI investigates these types of events when it comes to a protectee for the Secret Service. We're not given authorization per the federal statutes to investigate this ourselves. Having said that, what I would suggest for one of them on the Hill to do is, you need to find some retired former maybe even guys, that are recently formed like myself. I'm not putting my name up, but I'm just suggesting you need people that understand protection better than anybody. And that's not the FBI. They do world-class criminal investigations. But when it comes to doing people, places, and things protection and the limitations and the failures within there, if you want an investigative report, well, find guys that used to do it that understand it, guys and gals. I use guys as a slang, sorry for anybody. But find the people that know how to do that, bring them into your investigative panel and help guide what you're looking for and questions on where's the breakdowns, what went wrong that day, what went right, what do we need to do to improve this for an agency as a whole to polish these guys and gals back up. And some of that too, unpacking it and talking to my colleagues too, like budgetary issues. I was one of the few that never looked for another job when I was on the Secret Service. I left for family reasons. If it wasn't for that, I would still be there today. But I left outside of the service into a private side to be present for family. I had friends and colleagues that I worked with that were world class. But at a certain point, when you're traveling 300 days a year and you've got a family and a mortgage and all these things that come with life and time on in career, you could go to another federal investigative agency like an FBI or a DEA or HSI or an OIG investigator spot, and you're getting paid the exact same money that a Secret Service agent is, and you're working Monday through Friday with a take-home car for investigations, and it's a much better quality of life. And so, unfortunately, you get a lot of the best that have to weigh, well, I've got all these commitments. I'm a samurai warrior. My commitment is to the job, but all of a sudden I've got family and blah, blah. All these things happen. And so I think one of the things that they could look to do is start to pay these guys better, fix their retirement, put them back in Treasury Department, give them the overtime, because it's not uncommon, Colonel, believe it or not, you go work a 20-hour day, 5 days in a row, and you're getting your same salary check no matter what. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
So
I hear you. Well, let's take one last question real quick. Before we close out the show, Mike, I so greatly appreciate this. Shell, go ahead. I see the hand up. Let's go ahead and take that question real fast.
Yes, sir, we have Cash.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I got a question. I guess two quick ones. One, do you agree with the decision to have local law enforcement and not Secret Service guarding that roof? And then two, on the water tower, do you think that was the right call not to have anyone on the water tower? Thank you.
Good questions.
So I think I heard the first one about agreeing with local law enforcement. What was the second one about the water tower?
Nobody was on the water tower is the way the question was posed. Do you agree that there was nobody on the water tower? Should there have been somebody there?
Yeah. So do I agree? So first question, do I agree with local law enforcement out there on the building and the perimeter, manning that building and being responsible for it versus service? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if I brought the President of the United States there, I wouldn't have posted a Secret Service agent on that building. I would have posted local law or state law enforcement in there, and we would have absolutely done some sightline mitigation. So non-issue for me on how it was laid out. There's issues between the outer and middle and some breakdowns on communication and flow of info. But I wouldn't have posted it with the current President of the United States coming to that site. I just would have changed some environmental mitigation strategies. As far as the water tower goes, it's the same thing. You would have seen it. You would have recognized that it's within range. Snipers would have been briefed on it, and I probably would have posted a PD officer out there in a car down by like the ladder area to climb up on a water tower. So I wouldn't have posted a Secret Service person over there at all.
Well, Mike, thank you very much for spending this time with us. Some very clarifying answers to some really tough questions, and I think we'll continue to see these questions. Hopefully, we can get you back sometime in the future as this plays out and get your thoughts on it.
Colonel, I'd love to. I appreciate you having me, and anytime you want to talk through whatever comes down the road on this, I'd love to be helpful for you and your audience.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Well, tomorrow is Truth Thursday, and there's a group called the Calvert Group, organized by U.S. Naval Academy graduates. They've written a book about how DEI is destroying the United States Navy. And man, we need a Navy more than ever right now because we don't have enough ships, we don't have enough carriers, and we're not deterring the Communist Chinese Party that's in control of the People's Republic of China out in the Pacific or anywhere else around the world. So this will be an interesting Truth Thursday. I'll see you then on the Worldview 2.